between the GRE, the Gmat, and the Lsat. So I'm an expert in all four of these tests. I've taken all of them, and I've taught all of them for close to 20 years. So the first test I took was the Lsat, and I also went to law school and have a law degree. The Lsat is designed specifically for law school, and what it does is it brilliantly tests the things that you need to be able to do for law school. So it's going to test your reasoning, your logic, your precision in argumentation, as well as your writing. Now, the Lsat is a half-day test, and it's given now 9 times a year on a tablet. It has both a multiple choice portion and a writing portion that you do on your own afterwards. So the Lsat is just totally brilliantly designed for law school. And I have a great deal of respect for this test. The Gmat is brilliantly, perfectly designed for business school. So the Gmat is the Graduate Management Admission Test, and it's also a half-day test. It's given on a computer, and it has essentially 4 parts. There's a math part, which makes sense. You need to be able to deal with math when it comes to business. There's a verbal part, which has to do with reading and also some logic, and also your ability to, grammatically put together thoughts. It tests grammar on the Gmat. And then there's also a writing section and something called integrated reasoning. Integrated reasoning is much more like what you're going to be doing in real life business, dealing with multiple pieces of information and sorting through them and that sort of thing. Just a brilliantly written test. Then there's the GRE. And I'm going to sound like a broken record. Another brilliantly written test. So the GRE is designed for graduate programs. And specifically, you should think of like people that are going on to get masters or PhDs in most fields. So, psychology, history, archaeology. And then it just is brilliantly written because, yes, it has math, but it also has verbal. And the verbal on the GRE is much more, is designed specifically for what, GRE grad students need to be able to do. And, post-grad, when a lot of these people are going to be in academia, it's testing your ability to compete in that academic world. The GRE also has a writing section. Now, so these 3 tests are all brilliantly designed for exactly what they're testing. There has definitely been a trend in the recent years for schools in one area to start accepting the scores from another. So the Gmat is the standard test for business schools, but there's been a big push in the last 10 years to also start taking the GRE, and now most schools are. I believe they still definitely prefer the Gmat. I think that a big part of this was just a competitive nature. It's basically that schools had to accept the GRE in order to stay competitive with other business schools. And to be honest, typically people who do well in the Gmat would also do well in the GRE. And even just the last few years, there's been much more of a trend for law schools to also start accepting the GRE. Now, I do actually think that this is a mistake personally. I just don't think the GRE tests the things that you need for law school, and a big portion of the GRE has nothing to do with law school. There's no math in law school. Well, unless you take some taxation classes, which I did. But you don't need geometry or anything like that. So I personally believe that these 3 tests are brilliantly written and that they should be applied in the areas that they specialize in. GRE is perfect for grad programs, for people that are going to be in academia, doing peer review in scholarly journals. It is a perfect test for that. Gmat, perfect test for business school. It makes you think strategically and deal with information in the way that business people would have to deal with it. And the Lsat, just brilliantly written for law school. It tests those things, those skills that lawyers are going to need. Now, there's one thing I would say about all 3 tests, and for a student, this might not make sense, but I actually think your study and preparation for these 3 tests is actually class 1 of graduate school. It's starting to train you. These tests are starting to train you to think like you need to think for graduate school. It's not just wasted time. It's training you to think, like for the LSAT, it's training you to start thinking like a lawyer. For the GMAT, it's training you to start thinking like a business person. For the GRE, it's training you to start thinking like an academic. So I think these tests are brilliant, and I personally think schools will get a great deal of information about their candidates from looking at these scores.
Test Perfect offers an 8-week online course taught by test-taking expert Phil Hatch, who scored perfect on the GRE, perfect on the LSAT, and 790 out of 800 on the Gmat. Use code TESTPERFECT100 to receive $100 off your order. Subscribe to our channel for more test-taking tips. Visit testperfect.com today.